Isolated, out of his depth and scared of telling the public the truth. That's the withering verdict on the performance of Japan's then Prime Minister Naota Kan as the country's Fukushima nuclear crisis unfolded. Kenichi Matsumoto had a front row seat as a special advisor to Mr Kan's cabinet. Now he's gone public, describing what he saw as mind-boggling. He's accused the operator of the nuclear plant TEPCO of trying to play down the disaster. And he says the Japanese government knew right from the start that areas around the plant would be uninhabitable for 10 or even 20 years. North Asia correspondent Mark Willesee reports from Tokyo.
It was the moment Japan's natural disaster went nuclear. 25 hours after being hit by the tsunami, Fukushima's reactor building number 1 exploded. Back in Tokyo, the then Prime Minister Naota Kan and his cabinet were scrambling for scraps of information from the operator TEPCO about what was going on at the stricken plant.
TEPCO wanted to make the disaster look small, so it didn't properly convey the truth to the government.
Among Prime Minister Kan's inner circle at the time was Kenichi Matsumoto, the special advisor to the cabinet. He was stunned by TEPCO's handling of the disaster.
First of all, TEPCO didn't convey accurate information about the accident. TEPCO's headquarters even wanted to evacuate the nuclear plant, but the chief of the facility vowed not to leave. So Prime Minister Kan was outraged because he wasn't getting proper information or the truth.
For hundreds of kilometres around the plant, people were desperate for information about the radiation threat. Around the cabinet table in Tokyo, drastic measures were being considered. Measures that would have affected 30 million people in the world's biggest metropolis.
It's true. The Prime Minister said we might have to evacuate people in Tokyo. There was no clue about the amount of radiation coming from the plant, or if it was spreading over 100 or 200 kilometres. If that was the case, Tokyo would be in danger. And Prime Minister Kan actually said that eastern Japan might not be able to keep functioning.
Kenichi Matsumoto is the ultimate insider. He's not just critical of TEPCO, the operator of the Fukushima plant, but of the very government he served, describing its performance during the Fukushima crisis as mind-boggling. Did Mr Kan perform well in this crisis?
I don't think he handled it well. Because it was such a terrible accident, information should have been shared with the whole cabinet, but it wasn't. It stopped with Mr Kan, who handled it alone, so the cabinet was isolated and wasn't able to formulate its advice properly.
80,000 people remain nuclear refugees. Their communities deemed to be too close to the Fukushima plant or to radiation hotspots. Many are now in their 7th month living in shelters or temporary housing. Most don't know if or when they can return to their homes. Former Cabinet Advisor Kenichi Matsumoto believes the evacuees should have been told the truth months ago.
The Cabinet knew right after the disaster that some people would not be able to live in their communities for 10 or 20 years. The government should have conveyed the truth to the evacuees, but it felt scared. It feared telling the truth to the people.
Like Naota Kan, Kenichi Matsumoto has now left his cabinet post, returning to his university position as a professor of history. But it's the history of this nuclear disaster at Fukushima and how those in power responded to it that he seems most determined to tell. Mark Willesee, Lateline.
Lateline approached former Prime Minister Naota Kan for comment but received no response. A spokesman for TEPCO has told the programme that the company never tried to play down the disaster or cover up information. But he says it is true there was confusion and mistakes were made at the start of the crisis.